The Tesla Model Y did something no electric vehicle had ever done before. It became the best-selling car on the planet. Not the best-selling electric vehicle. It outsold the Toyota Corolla, the Honda CR-V, every Volkswagen, every BMW. For the first time in automotive history, an electric vehicle sat at the top of the global sales charts, and everyone assumed it would stay there. But by December 2025, something strange had happened. Tesla's factories had gone quiet. Insurance companies were refusing to cover the car. And in Germany, the birthplace of the modern automobile, the Model Y was ranked dead last in reliability among every car on the road. So what happened? The obvious answer is competition. BYD, the Chinese EV wave, price wars. But that's not the real story. Because the Model Y's collapse didn't start with its competitors, decisions that seemed brilliant at the time, but created a chain reaction no one saw coming. And by the end of the video, you will understand everything. To understand what went wrong, you first need to understand what made the Model Y so dominant in the first place. When it launched in 2020, the Model Y wasn't just revolutionary. Tesla took the platform of the Model 3, which was already selling well, and gave it a taller body, more cargo space, and a higher ride height. It was essentially the same car, reskinned as an SUV. And that was the genius of it. SUVs were, and still are, the fastest growing segment in the global auto market. By adapting an existing platform, Tesla avoided billions in development costs while tapping into a demand curve that was already vertical. The result was explosive growth. By 2023, Tesla was producing Model Ys at a rate of over 1 million units per year. Waitlists stretched for months. The used car market couldn't keep up with demand, and investors began pricing Tesla as though its growth would continue indefinitely. Which brings us to the first crack in the foundation. Because Tesla wasn't just building cars, it was building a narrative. A narrative that said this company only goes up. And the moment that narrative broke, everything else started breaking with it. The first sign of trouble came in early 2024. Sales were still strong, but growth had started to plateau. For a company valued like a tech startup, flat growth was a crisis. So Tesla did what it had always done when demand softened. They cut prices. In January 2024, Tesla slashed the price of the Model Y by nearly $13,000 in some markets. In China, discounts went even deeper. The logic was simple. Lower prices would stimulate demand, maintain volume, and protect market share. And for a few months, it worked. But here's what no one noticed at the time. Every price cut didn't just lower revenue, it also lowered the resale value of every Model Y already on the road. Owners who had bought in 2022 or 2023 suddenly found themselves underwater. Their cars were worth less than what they still owed on their loans. And when those owners tried to trade in for a newer model, something Tesla had counted on to fuel repeat purchases, they couldn't afford to. The very strategy that was supposed to boost demand had quietly destroyed the upgrade cycle, which meant Tesla wasn't just losing new customers, it was losing its most loyal ones. However, Tesla had a plan. For years, rumors had circulated about a major refresh to the Model Y, internally codenamed Project Juniper. This wasn't going to be a minor facelift, it was going to be a complete reimagining, new exterior design, upgraded interior, better suspension, improved soundproofing. The idea was simple. Launch Juniper in early 2025, reignite demand, and prove that Tesla could still create a product so desirable that buyers would line up for months to get one. And in March 2025, that's exactly what they did. The new Model Y arrived with a sleeker front, a full-width rear light bar borrowed from the Cybertruck's design language, and an interior that finally addressed the long-standing complaints about ride harshness and road noise. For the first time, the Model Y felt premium. But this is where things started to get strange, because despite all the improvements, the supercycle never came. Within months of launch, reports began surfacing that launch edition Model Ys were sitting unsold in inventory. Trackers showed hundreds of these supposedly exclusive units gathering dust on dealer lots. This was not a supply problem. This was a demand problem, and the reason for it reveals something most people still don't understand about what actually drives car sales. Here's the thing about the automotive market. Most people don't buy cars because of specs. They buy cars because of trust. They trust that the car will work, that it won't leave them stranded, that when something goes wrong, someone will fix it. And this is where Tesla made a critical miscalculation. Because while they were pouring resources into the Juniper refresh, into the light bar and the ventilated seats and the ambient lighting, they were neglecting something far more important: the service network. By late 2025, Tesla's service infrastructure had reached a breaking point. Owners in major markets like California and Atlanta were reporting wait times of up to 2 months for basic repairs. Not major accidents, just basic repairs. A squeaky suspension, a faulty door handle. It could take 2 months. And here's why that mattered far more than anyone realized. Because when your car is in the shop for 2 months, you can't drive it, which means you need a rental, which means you're paying out of pocket, which means every day that passes, your trust in the brand erodes a little more. And when it comes time to buy your next car, when your spouse asks, should we get another Tesla, you remember those 2 months. You remember the frustration, the calls to service centers that went unanswered, the feeling of being abandoned by a company that promised you the future, and you don't come back. But the service delays weren't just annoying, they were expensive, and not just for owners. You see, when a car sits in a body shop waiting for parts, someone has to pay for the storage. For a week or two, that's manageable. But when wait times stretch into months, those storage fees start adding up. And here's what insurance companies discovered in 2025. In many cases, the cost of storing a damaged Tesla while waiting for parts exceeded the actual value of the car. So instead of repairing the vehicle, insurers started totaling it. Cars that could have been fixed, that should have been fixed, were written off entirely, not because of the damage, because of the wait. And this created a cascading effect that hit Tesla from an angle they never anticipated. Because when insurers total more cars, their losses go up, and when their losses go up, they raise premiums. In 2025, insurance rates for the Model Y spiked by as much as 29%, which meant that even if you could afford to buy a Model Y, you might not be able to insure it. And for a car that was supposed to represent the affordable future of electric transportation, that was a devastating blow. But the insurance crisis wasn't the only thing making headlines. A few days ago, the results of the German TÜV report were released. For those unfamiliar, the TÜV is Germany's mandatory vehicle inspection. It's the most rigorous quality assessment in the automotive world, and every year they publish a report ranking vehicles by their defect rates. The 2026 report covered cars that were 2 to 3 years old, which meant the Model Y was now old enough to be evaluated, and the results were catastrophic. The Model Y ranked dead last, not in a single category, overall. With a 17.3% severe defect rate, it was the least reliable car in the entire report. The main culprits? Suspension control arms that wore out prematurely, brake rotors that corroded because regenerative braking meant they were rarely used, lighting systems that failed at an alarming rate. These weren't exotic problems, they were fundamental engineering oversights, the kind that should have been caught during development. And this is the detail that changes everything. Because the TÜV report didn't just expose a quality problem, it exposed a philosophy problem. Tesla had spent years optimizing for production speed, for cost reduction, for the metrics that Wall Street cared about. But somewhere along the way, they had stopped optimizing for the thing that actually matters, whether the car still works 3 years later. Now you might think this would be rock bottom. With sales declining, service collapsing, insurance spiking, and reliability rankings cratering, Tesla would hit a floor and stabilize. But that's not what happened, because all of these problems created a feedback loop that made each one worse. Lower sales meant less revenue. Less revenue meant fewer resources for service centers. Fewer service centers meant longer wait times. Longer wait times meant higher insurance costs. Higher insurance costs meant fewer buyers. And fewer buyers meant even lower sales. By mid-2025, Tesla was forced to do something it had never done before: pause production. For an entire week, Gigafactory Texas went dark, not for maintenance, not for a tooling upgrade, to let demand catch up to supply. Aerial footage from that summer showed something even more telling. Across the country, Tesla had begun renting overflow parking lots, massive fields filled with unsold Model Ys and Cybertrucks sitting in the sun, waiting for buyers who weren't coming. For a company that had built its identity on scarcity, on wait lists and delivery delays, this was humiliation. But there's one more thread to this story, and it might be the most important one. For years, Tesla had been selling its cars with a feature called full self-driving. Buyers paid thousands of dollars, sometimes over $15,000, for the promise that their car would one day drive itself, that a software update would arrive and suddenly their Tesla would become a fully autonomous vehicle. That update never came. And in late 2025, a California administrative judge ruled that Tesla's marketing of full self-driving was deceptive. The ruling threatened to suspend Tesla's license to sell vehicles in California, its largest U.S. market. This wasn't about the technology, it was about the gap between what Tesla promised and what Tesla delivered. For over a decade, Elon Musk had been telling the world that full autonomy was 1 year away, that Teslas would become robo-taxis, that owners would make money while they slept by letting their cars drive strangers around. So where does that leave us? In 2025, Tesla delivered approximately 1.64 million vehicles, a 9% decline from the year before. For the first time in the company's modern history, annual sales went down. The Model Y, once the undisputed king of the global car market, fell to third place behind the Toyota RAV4 and the Toyota Corolla. And BYD, the Chinese automaker that most Americans had never heard of, officially overtook Tesla as the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer. But here's what makes this story more than just a tale of a company losing market share. Tesla didn't fail because of competition. Tesla failed because it optimized for growth at the expense of everything else. It optimized for production speed and got cars that broke in 3 years. It optimized for cost reduction and got a service network that couldn't keep up. Every shortcut, every trade-off, every decision to prioritize Wall Street metrics over long-term durability, all of it accumulated invisibly for years. And then, in 2025, it all came due at once. For a decade, Tesla rode a rising tide of cheap capital, EV enthusiasm, and a stock price that defied gravity. And as long as that tide kept rising, none of the cracks mattered. But tides don't rise forever. And when this one finally receded, when interest rates climbed, when competitors caught up, when the tax credits expired, what it revealed wasn't a company that had conquered the automotive industry. It was a company that had borrowed against its own future for so long, it forgot the bill would eventually come. The Model Y didn't fail because it was a bad car. It failed because it was built by a company that believed its own mythology and never prepared for the moment when the world stopped believing too.